Good evening and welcome to The Right Side, the show where we talk about today's news, views, trends, and opinions from an admittedly conservative perspective. My name's Chris Pareja, I'm your host, and this evening we're joined by Jay Nordlinger. He's a senior editor at the National Review Online, he's an author, and Jay, we just appreciate you joining us this evening.
I'm glad to be here.
So, tell us about how you first got started going down the path to journalism and all things written, and now electronically typed, etc.
Well, like a lot of us, I liked public affairs and world affairs. I liked biographies of the American founders. I was curious about the world, and I loved reading the paper, even in boyhood. My grandfather read the paper very closely every day, and I liked to do it too, and then we'd talk about it. So I've always been interested in the national stage and the world stage, kind of like some people are interested in butterflies and stamp collecting or tennis. You know, it's a bit of a hobby and for some people an obsession. So I'm a political junkie.
Right. But you have a diverse background. It's not just politics. You also write on things like music, and you're a critic in that regard as well?
Yeah, it's like I have a day job and a night job. And by day, I hate to sound like a superhero because I'm certainly not. By day, I'm a political journalist, and at night, I'm a music critic. And I like the two different spheres. It keeps life from being dull. I wouldn't like to do all of one or all of the other.
And it's the separation between the creative side and the more analytical side, I would assume, to some degree, or do you look at them as relatively the same?
There's a little creativeness in politics, as you well know.
Yeah, especially with facts. It gets very creative sometimes. Yes. And
I like a break from politics. I like a break from R's and D's, Republicans and Democrats, and left and right.
Excellent. And so one of the things that you've written recently caught my eye. You wrote a book about monsters and children.
Yeah.
What's the name of the book?
Children of Monsters, an inquiry into the sons and daughters of dictators.
And question that jumped right into my mind is, why would you write a book about children of dictators? What drew you into that realm?
I thought it was a good idea, and I hope it was. I was in Albania some time ago, and Albania had suffered one of the worst dictatorships of the whole 20th century, that of Enver Hoxha. There was pretty much nothing else like it on earth except for the Kim Il-sung dictatorship in North Korea. And Hoxha admired Kim and imitated him to a degree. Anyway, I was thinking about that dictatorship and the wreckage it left. And it occurred to me to ask someone there, did Hoxha have children? Because I couldn't imagine what their lives would be like. And he did have children, 2 sons and a daughter. The daughter was an architect who helped design the shrine to her father. And I thought that the Hoxha children might make a good magazine piece. As a magazine writer, I'm always looking for my next piece, or as a colleague of mine says, you never know where your next meal is coming from. And then I thought, you know, you could do a survey of such children, sons and daughters of dictators around the world, and make a book of it called Children of Monsters. So later on, I acted on that idea, and now I have this very peculiar, sometimes ghoulish, sometimes sensational book.
Sounds pretty serious. Not like a coloring book type of Children of Monsters. It's
no.
More...
There's a little humor in this book. It's leavened with... It has streaks of light, of uplift, and some gallows humor. But it has its grimness as well, it's true.
So how did you go about selecting the families? What did it take to be qualified as a monster in your story?
You had to be really bad. As a friend of mine put it, body count mattered.
Okay.
This is the worst of the worst. There are a couple of exceptions. There are 2 in there who aren't real monsters. I put them in there anyway. But pretty much these are the most tyrannical, most murderous dictators of the 20th century and a bit beyond.
Well, the reality is we have a culture, or at least aspects of our culture, that glamorize and idolize these dictators, and many of them don't think about the body counts.
That's right.
When you're talking about body counts, you're talking, oh, they just bumped off a few, they had to crack a few eggs, or are you talking military-grade omelets in the mess tent kind of egg cracking that they were up to? I mean, millions, tens of thousands? This is a
murderous bunch. This is a genocidal bunch. Stalin, Mao, Mengistu in Ethiopia, the Kim family, Pol Pot, whose Khmer Rouge murdered between really 1/5 and 1/4 of the whole Cambodian population. And you remind me, there's this old expression, usually attributed to Lenin, they have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. And one of the things Orwell said was, where's the omelet? There's never an omelet. They're just the corpses.
Right. Right. So these are a murderous bunch, and I'm curious about what you found when researching the children. How many of them rose to power? How many of them went into hiding? I'm sure there's a mix.
Yes.
But you probably saw trends.
Yes. Well, there was some rising to power, some rebellion, some exile, some early death, some imprisonment, lots of confusion and heartache, all sorts of things. I think, 3 or 4 successor sons, as I call them. So in North Korea, we've had 3 Kims now. The grandson of the founding Kim is on the throne there. We're on our second Assad in Syria. And we had, of course, Papa Doc and Baby Doc in Haiti. There's no grandbaby Doc yet, but there is such a kid. He's sort of middle-aged now, and he's an advisor to the current Haitian president, if you can believe it.
Out of curiosity, do they end up more murderous, less murderous? Are they actually in competition with the legacy in some way, or do they run from it?
Well, lots of these guys, the sons in particular, want approval, and they bask in the glory of the father, and they want to go and do likewise. There are lots of sons who would have risen to power, but the dad couldn't hang on. One of the Ceausescu sons in Romania, one of the Gaddafi kids probably would have succeeded Muammar. Who knows, maybe one of Saddam's sons in Iraq. These are lousy people. These are really goon-like people. Not all the sons. Some people have a better nature or a stronger conscience, let's say. But mainly this is a pretty bad crew, the little monsters of bigger monsters.
And so how much time did they actually spend with the parents, or were they schooled in the castle or in the compound, as it were? Did they go and learn academically other places and just come back to learn how to murder? How did it work?
That's a very astute question. Most of these children didn't see their father very often. The father was a remote figure, busy being a dictator. And I think that the kids prized or cherished or worshipped their father all the more for the very fewness of their encounters with that father. And very often, as you guessed, they were sent abroad to study. That's sort of it's a kind of compliment of the West, isn't it? That many dictators send their children to study in liberal democracies. I think just about all the Gaddafi children studied in Europe.
And you would think that if they're creating the utopia that is often attributed to these dictators by people, especially with leftist leanings, that if it was such a utopia, that they would want to learn there, where all of these great concepts of equality are enforced and emphasized. But it's not the case.
Well, there's an old saying, people vote with their feet, and sometimes I guess dictators vote in where they send their kids to study.
Right. Yeah. And many of them seek medicine and health care.
They're always coming over here.
Right.
Always.
Not in their own fair and equal systems where everyone gets free health care.
Oh, no, no. Remember the governor of Newfoundland? And Canada's a lovely, lovely country and a liberal democracy. But remember, I think the governor of Newfoundland went to Florida for an important surgery. What did that say about the Canadian healthcare system? I thought it was sort of embarrassing for them.
Yeah, for sure. And so were they normally safe within their education environments abroad, or did they require extra protection?
Well, of course, they had bodyguards. The Kim kids, in a couple of generations, studied in Switzerland. Can you imagine the Kim family in Switzerland? But there they were. And also the second 2 Kim dictators had been basketball fanatics. Can you believe it? Kim Jong-il followed the NBA fanatically. His favorite
if you're going to
players,
do it, it has to be done fanatically.
Of course.
Just saying.
What else can fan mean, right? And Kim Jong-il's favorite player was Michael Jordan. And when Madeleine Albright, as Secretary of State, went over there, she carried with her a ball signed by Michael Jordan as an offering to the dictator.
Wow.
That is a weird one.
Yeah.
And that man's son, of course, has this friendship, this odd friendship with Dennis Rodman.
And I've seen that too. And Dennis has been over to hang out, right?
More than once, yes. We have a little intel about the Kim family from Dennis. For example, no one, as far as I know, including intelligence agencies, knew the name of Kim Jong-un's daughter until Dennis Rodman said so in a press conference. That's a weird one, isn't it?
It is. Well, see, professional sports has its benefits to society beyond just
together.
Cheering people up.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, that's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
And so what were some of the ahas? You probably went in with some suppositions about what you were going to find. Mm-hmm. Which ones were confirmed, and what blew your mind as you uncovered something that was even more twisted or more uplifting than you might have expected going in?
I thought there'd be more overt rebellion and dissent than I found. Most of these children are loyal, at least outwardly so. And I think that makes the dissenters all the more special and admirable. I think in particular of Stalin's daughter, Svetlana, who actually defected in 1967. Also one of Castro's daughters, Fidel Castro's daughters, Alina Fernandez, defected in the 1990s, became a radio talk show host in Miami, a very brave woman who has suffered a lot.
And they were willing to throw it all out.
They did.
To move away.
Those are the two defectors. And there are other dissenters, or those with doubts, who even expressed them publicly. And those who didn't talk or write, who knows what they really felt in their hearts. Sometimes this loyalty is merely outward.
Right, right. And so any takeaways that you're hoping people will grab from the book? I mean, this is not a book where we're going to spoil the ending or anything else, but what are you hoping people come out with?
Well, there are all sorts of thoughts I had about this book, but sometimes readers have their own, which is very nice. And a lot have told me that the book, and I did not aim for this or expect it, they said the book made them all the more appreciative of democracy, the rule of law, an atmosphere of ordered liberty, because you see just how awful dictatorship is, how random, how capricious. You never know what's going on. And it makes you realize just how rare the rule of law is. It really is an uncommon thing, and we're lucky to have it where we live. Really, really lucky. We owe the founders a lot. They weren't perfect, but they gave us a good republic if we can keep it.
Right. And so, but it is interesting when you talk about democracy, and how many people, again, I go back to that idolization type of mentality that many people have towards some of these dictators. And a lot of the people who scream and demand democracy want the democracy only until they're able to get the dictatorship where things get done.
Right.
And then at that point, democracy doesn't have to be there anymore, and they're perfectly fine with that. But not looking at the ramifications, sometimes generationally, that you've covered in your book.
Well, that's exactly right. I often find that the true Democrat with a small d is a relatively rare person. You have to care more about process than outcome. I, for example, lose a lot of elections, or at least my side does. But I'm happy that I have another shot at it, 2 years later, 4 years later, whatever it is. That's democracy, that's the ballot, that's rotation in office. And to be a nation of laws rather than a nation of men is extremely important. If you have a good, benign, wise king or dictator, a benevolent type, great. But usually you don't. So you'd rather take your chance on the constitutional nation, the nation governed by a charter, a nation of laws rather than men, because men and women, as we all know, both please and disappoint.
Well, especially when they take office wearing very rugged boots and machine guns versus at the ballot box where people tend to have less negative outcome than in those other scenarios.
You got it. You got it.
So speaking of elections, we are deep in the battle. Even tonight as we tape here, there is the New Hampshire primary going on. What kinds of
Are you running?
I'm not running for anything currently.
No one's tried to draft me. I'm almost insulted. Yeah. No one ever asked me.
There might be some vacancies in the next week or so. Maybe they'll offer you one to fill it back up.
That'd because be a very dark horse.
Yeah. Well, you can't just have one debate on one side at a time. You have to have the big stage and the little stage. That's how we've gone.
I'm in the undercard. Yeah.
Well, you got to start somewhere and then rise up through the ranks. Any surprises so far in the season? Any predictions?
Donald Trump, huge surprise. Bernie Sanders, huge surprise. What an odd year. This is one of the screwiest, goofiest political years we've ever had. I mean, it's just crazy on both the Democratic side and the Republican side. You can hardly analyze it in the usual ways because the rules have been broken. Donald Trump, the Republican frontrunner, and this Ben & Jerry's Vermont socialist giving Hillary Clinton a run for her money. I couldn't have written this script.
But it's the most open, extreme view of our country's opinions that has happened in anyone's lifetime. People are actually being very open about who they are and what they think, whether it's politically correct or not, whether it's perceived as popular or not. And interestingly, they're getting play.
It's a polarized country. It's a time of extremes, I would say, a time of anger, a time of letting it all hang out. And to a degree, that's good.
And with that, you say the rules are broken. Talk to me about what the undercurrent is like as you're seeing it as a political analyst. Have the states as a whole lost their mind, or is this just they're just finally having options where they can get emotionally attached at a deeper level?
Well, the Trump phenomenon is something we thought about and studied for a very long time. I think part of his appeal is he's such a good performer. He's a good television performer. He's a natural. He has a sense of theater. He's really a character. He's a character straight out of reality TV.
Literally.
And also, absolutely.
Literally.
Yes. Yeah. And he dominates a stage. And I sometimes say when I review music, especially opera, I'll say so-and-so is more comfortable on stage than most of us are in our living rooms and our armchairs. Donald Trump is so comfortable on television, there's no place he'd rather be. He's an excellent performer. I think there is a shocking degree of charlatanism and demagoguery in him. But he has a plurality so far of, 25% of the Republican primary electorate, something like that. He'll need more, unless it's a very strange season when you have some sort of brokered convention scenario. But Trump has thrown everything off. He has skewed the entire race. And I really think Bernie is as high as he is because Hillary Clinton needs a challenger, and he's pretty much the only game in town. Why Elizabeth Warren didn't jump in is a mystery. I think she probably would have caught fire.
Right. Well, we are going to get to see both sides of the far sides of opinion, I think. And I think it'll actually be good for the country to see, for example, I would love to see a Cruz versus Sanders debate, just to show people the two possible outcomes. But
capitalists and socialists.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And which one makes sense to the people when it's properly articulated, because I think that they're both pretty pure in their ideologies.
They're good. Each is a good spokesman for his side. That's true. Yeah, that's true.
And so outcomes after tonight, a few more people will fall off. Yeah. Any suppositions about who will fall off or how the cards may fall in New Hampshire this evening? How much different will it be than Iowa, as an example?
Oh, very different, I think. Very different. I think you might see Kasich finish very, very well. And I'm not sure he'll do well hereafter. New Hampshire might be the last gasp for him. Though, who knows? It's been such an unpredictable year. I like that these first states and caucuses and primaries are a diversity of states. Iowa's very different from New Hampshire, which is very different from South Carolina. So that's good. And Florida will happen soon. And all types of these American types live in Florida. Northeasterners, Southerners, others. So that's a good test as well. And there are 2 Floridians in the race so far. But listen, this is very hard to predict. It's hard for me to predict. I said, I'll tell you kind of a joke, but it's true. I said to anyone who had listened between 1992 and 1996 that Bill Clinton would be a one-term president. I thought he was an accident to the Perot candidacy in 1992, which took almost a fifth of the vote, and especially after the 1994 midterms, which were a tsunami for the Republicans. I said, look, Clinton's a one-term president, and he was reelected handily. So since then, I've been relatively humble about political predictions. And this year, for sure, as soon as you say something, even with half confidence, not full confidence, you can be contradicted by events the next day.
Right. You don't know what's going to happen. Curiosity, though. There's been speculation that if, for example, Hillary decided to drop out of the campaign or change her outfit from whatever she wears on the campaign trail to something orange, kind of onesie-ish, maybe some silver bracelets, legs and hands, etc., and came out of the race.
We used to have stripes.
little stripe, pinstripes. If she gets to choose, are they going to be horizontal or vertical? I mean, there's some choices that could occur there. But would someone like a Joe Biden or someone else be able to jump in at this point in the race, or is it too late? Are they past the point of no return?
I'm not sure what the mechanics are, but I have a feeling that the DNC could rig things so that they have a presentable, plausible nominee for the fall.
Did you use the three-letter word rig?
I think I did.
In politics?
I think I did, yeah.
Oh, wait a minute.
But listen, I think that's okay with primaries and nominations. Honestly, I really do. I think these ought to be, we vote on them now in these primary elections and caucuses, but I'm okay with this being a party decision and then let people vote in the general. I don't think it was such a worse era when there were backroom deals and anointed nominees and so on. I'm not really sure.
Well, when there's a nominating committee going at that level, do they require voter ID? I'm just curious because we don't allow that here. Would they allow it there? You may agree with me. I've never been able to get exercised about voter ID. You have to show your ID absolutely everywhere. Why is it sacrosanct that you not show it at the polling place? I just think that's kind of strange. I go to my polling place. I could say I'm Mickey Mouse. It really doesn't matter. And they just sort of wave me through and I vote. I pull the lever, whatever it is. And I always think there should be some sort of control. But other people consider that outrageous and probably racist. How are you going to vote 6 times in a day if you have to show your ID at all those places?
Well, you might have different ideas. You know. They said in Boston, vote often and early for James Michael Curley.
Yeah.
Who was elected, I believe, twice from a jail cell. That could be a case that Hillary wants to study. I
think it's always impressive how you can get 105 or 110% of the registered voters in the district to vote for you.
That's fun.
That is some serious pull and credibility within the market.
That's a ground game.
Yeah.
In some cases, a below ground game.
Yeah. Well, and then some of them, and that's not even including the ones that end up in the Bay for us. So it's impressive, that kind of a ground game. Yeah. So
is there a Republican Party in California? Is there an opposition party?
Well, the citizens are all opposed to the things that are happening in many cases, but the Republicans try not to make much noise here.
Okay.
We try to keep it down.
I'm too loud for the state. Yeah, I'll leave soon.
Indeed. So tell us a little bit more about, if people want to find out what you're writing or learn more about Children of Monsters, is there a website they can go to?
Well, I work for National Review. I'm a writer and editor at National Review, so that's nationalreview.com. There are a lot of interesting people on there, and we have a print magazine, a biweekly, founded by William F. Buckley Jr. in the 1950s. I'm the music critic of the New Criterion, and I've written a history of the Nobel Peace Prize, and now this study of the sons and daughters of dictators. So all that can be Googled, and it's kind of a mixed up, messed up little career.
Spell Nordlinger for people who don't just roll it off their tongues.
It's your pronunciation is excellent, I must say. I think there's only basically one way to spell it, but I do spell it for people. It's Nordlinger. And to go with that mouthful of a last name, my parents gave me a simple, short first name, Jay, J-A-Y.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing your passion and your insight with us, Jay. We'll be back after a moment.
You proved I could spell my name right. I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, with a name like mine, I understand. Okay. But if you hold on for just a moment, we'll be back after a word from our underwriters, the Conservative Forum.
The Conservative Forum of Silicon Valley began with 20 conservatives meeting at a restaurant in November of 2003. Our mission is to promote the principles of American liberty through education. By 2012, we had grown to over 600 paid members. Our monthly meetings feature well-known and prestigious conservative speakers addressing issues that are critical to our country's very survival. This includes speakers like Victor Davis Hanson, Andrew Breitbart, David Horowitz, and many others. In addition to our monthly meetings, we sponsor a conservative local cable access TV show, The Right Side, covering today's topics. Our Constitution discussion group not only teaches the Constitution, but started our annual essay contest that awards 2 $1,000 scholarships to local high school seniors. We are a virtual clearinghouse for grassroots organizations by providing them with table space at no charge in our exhibit area. There are typically a dozen groups represented. If you are like-minded, join us at our next meeting and become motivated and empowered. Liberty, made in America.
And that was a word from our underwriters, the Conservative Forum. We appreciate them underwriting the show for 4 seasons in their completion, and this is the 5th season, but what they're really best known for is their speaker series, which happens the second Tuesday of each month at the IFES Portuguese Hall right here around the corner in Mountain View. In March, Kevin D. Williamson, roving correspondent for National Review, will be with us. And in April, John Eastman of Chapman University and the Federalist Society will be joining us. And this evening, the reason that we were graced with Jay's presence is that he'll be speaking at the forum at 7 o'clock tonight at the IFES Portuguese Hall again. If you need more information on that, you can look at theconservativeforum.com and get all of the details there. And in closing, we'd just like to thank you for joining us this evening, and do encourage you to look at Jay Nordlinger's work, whether it's on the music front, the political front, or around his book, Children of Monsters. As you can tell from the interview, is a fascinating guy with a very diverse background of covering a number of things that will be of interest to you. So again, look him up. We appreciate your time this evening. I've been your host, Chris Pareja. This has been The Right Side, and we'll look forward to seeing you either on the show or in person sometime soon. But if you just can't wait, you can also reach out to us at therightsidetv@gmail.com, and we'll try to get all of your questions answered. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night.